All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Zane's The Sex Chronicles.
Whoa.
Have you had a chance to check it out yet?
I have.
Okay, great. So you know this collection, it's broken up into 3 sections.
Okay.
Wild, Wilder, and then Off Damn Hook.
Wow.
So it just keeps getting more and more intense as you go.
Okay.
And we're going to start with Wild. And the excerpt that we have is from Barnes & Noble, and it's from the story First Night.
Gotcha.
And this, I think, really sets the tone for the entire collection.
Okay.
You already know Zane doesn't hold back.
Yeah. She's known for her honesty and her very frank approach to sexuality.
Yes, definitely. And so this excerpt starts off with a pretty classic romantic setup.
Right.
You know, we got a bed and breakfast in Maine.
Sounds cozy.
Yeah, there's a rainstorm, a fireplace, champagne, like all the ingredients are there.
It's like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, exactly. But then Zane flips the script completely.
Okay. How so?
Well, it's not about some, demure heroine waiting to be swept off her feet.
Okay. I see.
The woman in this story, she takes charge right from the start.
Okay. So she's initiating the intimacy.
Exactly. And she's making her desires crystal clear.
So there's no shying away from her, from her pleasure.
No, not at all. And that's something that really stands out in Zane's writing.
Right. And the way she describes it, it's so visceral.
Yes.
You know, she uses all these sensory details to really put you right there in the moment with the characters.
It's definitely immersive.
It is.
But, beyond just the explicitness, what stands out to you about how Zane portrays female desire in this excerpt?
Well, I think what's really striking is how she subverts the typical power dynamic you often see.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about a woman enjoying sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about her being the driving force, dictating the pace and the intensity.
Yes.
It's a level of agency you don't always find even in contemporary erotic fiction.
That's so true. And there's this one line that really stuck with me where the woman tells her partner, "Touch me like you mean it."
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's so simple, but so powerful.
Yeah, it's like a declaration,
Yes.
She's not asking for permission.
Right.
She's stating her need and her expectation.
It's about owning that desire.
Exactly. And that directness is something that Zane does consistently throughout her work.
Yeah, and it's not just about challenging traditional gender roles either.
Right.
I feel like Zane is also pushing back against these societal expectations of how specifically Black women are supposed to express their sexuality.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in a lot of ways, Black female sexuality has either been, hypersexualized or completely silenced in the media.
It's like they're only allowed to exist in these very narrow boxes.
Right. And Zane carves out a space for a more authentic, nuanced representation.
That's so important.
It is.
Because our characters are complex. They have agency, and they refuse to be defined by stereotypes.
And that's powerful.
It is, but let's be honest, this kind of raw, explicit portrayal of female desire, particularly Black female desire, it was bound to ruffle some feathers.
Oh. It definitely did. I mean, Zane faced criticism from those who felt like her work was too graphic or that it perpetuated negative stereotypes.
Yeah.
But, the reality is she was holding up a mirror to a reality that a lot of people just weren't comfortable acknowledging.
Right. It's like she was saying, this is what female desire looks like. Deal with it.
Exactly. And for a lot of readers, especially women, it was incredibly liberating.
Yes.
It gave them permission to embrace their own desires and to see their experiences reflected in a way that they hadn't before.
So it wasn't just about titillation, it was about validation.
Precisely.
Zane's work resonated because it went beyond the surface.
Mm-hmm.
It explored these complexities of relationships, self-discovery, and that search for genuine connection.
Right. And, while First Night gives us a taste of that, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
The Sex Chronicles is packed with all these diverse characters and scenarios.
Pushing the boundaries of what we think we know about female desire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that variety, that exploration of the full spectrum of female experience that makes Zane's work so compelling.
So you've got a good grasp on what Zane's trying to achieve with First Night, but we've barely scratched the surface of the Sex Chronicles as a whole.
Right.
Let's take a step back and look at some of the broader themes that she tackles throughout the entire collection.
Okay, sure.
What do you see as some of the big ideas that she's grappling with?
Well, one of the most fascinating aspects to me is how Zane addresses this intersection of race, gender, and sexuality.
Okay.
It's not just about desire. It's
Yeah.
about how those desires are shaped by societal forces and cultural norms.
And how those norms can be challenged.
Exactly. Zane doesn't shy away from depicting the double standards and pressures that Black women face.
Right.
But she also empowers her characters to reclaim their sexuality and define their own narratives.
And this is where I think the collection as a whole goes from being just erotic to genuinely groundbreaking.
Yeah, it becomes a statement. It says, these are our stories, these are our desires, and we will no longer be silenced.
But it's not all, serious social commentary.
No.
Zane's known for her humor, too.
Oh, absolutely. Her writing is infused with wit and playfulness.
Right.
It makes the reading experience fun, even when she's tackling some pretty heavy themes.
I love that about her work.
It's like she's inviting you to laugh along with her, to acknowledge that sex can be both pleasurable and absurd.
And that humor, I think, makes her work even more accessible and relatable.
It disarms the reader, and it creates this space for open, honest conversations about sexuality.
Yes.
Like she's saying, let's talk about this, but let's not take ourselves too seriously.
So we've talked about Zane's bold style, her focus on female pleasure and agency, and her willingness to tackle these complex social issues, but with a healthy dose of humor.
Right. And those elements, I think, all come together to create a body of work that's both deeply personal and universally resonant.
And how she manages to challenge conventions while still delivering stories that are engaging, entertaining, and thought-provoking.
It's a delicate balance. But Zane pulls it off masterfully.
She does.
And that's ultimately why her work continues to resonate with readers even decades later.
Now, before we get into some of the specific ways that Zane achieves that balance, I want to take a quick look at the historical context in which she emerged as a writer.
Okay.
Because this was a period of significant change in how female sexuality was being portrayed in literature.
It was.
There were other authors pushing boundaries, but Zane's voice was uniquely raw and unapologetic and specifically centered on Black women's experiences.
Right. She wasn't afraid to go there.
Yeah.
And in doing so, she opened doors for so many other writers.
And helped to shape a more inclusive and diverse literary landscape.
Absolutely. And that's, crucial because representation matters.
It does.
When you see yourself reflected in art, in literature, it validates your experiences and it gives you a sense of belonging.
It's like Zane was saying, you're not alone and your desires are valid.
Exactly. And that message resonated with so many readers, particularly Black women, who had rarely seen their sexuality explored with such honesty and depth.
Now, you mentioned that Zane emerged during a time of change in how female sexuality was being depicted. What were some of the other kind of literary influences at play?
Well, think about the second wave of feminism, the sexual revolution.
Right.
There was this growing movement to reclaim female pleasure and challenge those patriarchal norms.
So it was a very specific moment in time.
It was.
Yeah.
And authors like Erica Jong and Susie Bright were already pushing boundaries.
Okay.
But Zane brought this distinctly Black female perspective to the conversation.
She wasn't just writing about sex. She was writing about freedom, about self-discovery, about breaking free from these societal constraints.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the real power of the Sex Chronicles lies. It's not just a collection of erotic stories. It's a testament to the resilience and strength of Black women.
It's about reclaiming their narratives, their bodies, their desires.
And doing so on their own terms without apology or shame.
Now, some critics argued that Zane's work was exploitative or that it reinforced negative stereotypes.
Right.
What are your thoughts on those critiques?
Well, it's important to acknowledge that there were and still are diverse opinions about Zane's work.
Sure.
Some people felt that the explicit nature of her writing objectified women, while others saw it as a celebration of female sexuality.
And I think it's easy to jump to those conclusions without really understanding the nuances of her work.
Right.
And it seems like those who criticize Zane's work often miss the point that she's writing from a place of empowerment, not exploitation.
Exactly.
Her characters are in control, they're making choices, they're owning their desires.
Right. And I think it's also crucial to remember that art can be subjective.
Yeah.
What one person finds empowering, another might find offensive.
Right.
But that doesn't diminish the impact of Zane's work or the conversations that it sparked.
It's a reminder that art can be a catalyst for these important social dialogues, even if those dialogues are uncomfortable or challenging.
And that's a good thing. Discomfort can be a sign of growth, of pushing beyond our preconceived notions, and engaging with new perspectives.
Now let's get back to the collection itself. What are some of the other recurring themes or motifs that you see woven throughout the Sex Chronicles?
Well, one that stands out is this idea of transgression.
Okay.
Zane's characters often engage in acts that are considered taboo or outside the bounds of societal norms.
Like the story The Chocolate Kiss, where a group of women form a secret society dedicated to exploring their sexual desires.
Exactly. And through these acts of transgression, Zane's characters aren't only seeking pleasure,
Yeah.
they're also seeking liberation.
They're challenging the rules
Right.
and expectations that have been imposed upon them.
It's like they're saying, we refuse to be defined by your narrow definitions of what's acceptable.
And in doing so, they're reclaiming their power and autonomy.
Yes, but it's not just about rebellion for rebellion's sake,
Right.
Zane also explores the emotional and psychological complexities of her characters.
Even in the midst of these, very intense sexual encounters, there's a sense that these characters are craving something deeper, something more meaningful.
It's about finding connection, not just physical gratification. And that's something that resonates with readers on a very human level.
Regardless of their own, sexual preferences or experiences.
Exactly. It's about that universal longing for love, acceptance, and belonging.
And that's what makes Zane's work so enduring. It goes beyond the shock value or the titillation to explore that fundamental human need for connection. Now, thinking about Zane's legacy, what kind of impact do you think her work has had on subsequent generations of writers?
Oh, she undoubtedly paved the way for this new wave of Black female authors who are writing about sexuality with more freedom and boldness than ever before.
Authors like Roxane Gay, Jessica B. Harris, and Tomi Adeyemi, to name a few.
Exactly. And they're not just writing about sex. They're exploring this wide range of themes and genres, from literary fiction to fantasy to memoir.
But there's this through line.
Yes.
This sense of owning their narratives and refusing to be silenced.
And that's a direct legacy of Zane's work.
Yeah.
She gave them permission to be bold, to be honest, and to tell their stories without apology.
And that's incredibly powerful.
It is, and it's a reminder that art can be a force for change, that it can challenge norms, spark conversations, and inspire new generations to embrace their voices and tell their own stories.
So we've talked about Zane's impact on other writers, but what about her impact on readers? What do you think her work offers those who are engaging with it for the first time today?
I think it offers a sense of validation, especially for those who have felt marginalized or silenced.
Okay.
It says, your experiences matter, your desires are valid, and you are not alone.
And it can be incredibly liberating to see those experiences reflected in art, especially art that's so raw and unapologetic.
It can be a powerful form of self-discovery.
But beyond the personal impact, Zane's work also has this broader social significance.
Right.
It challenges us to think critically about the ways we view and talk about sexuality, especially Black female sexuality.
It forces us to confront our own biases and assumptions and to consider the ways in which societal norms can be limiting and even harmful.
And it encourages us to have more open and honest conversations about sex and desire.
Conversations that are respectful, inclusive, and free from judgment.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the specific details of First Night to the broader themes of the Sex Chronicles to Zane's lasting legacy. But there's one question I keep coming back to. It's about how Zane's exploration of female desire in the Sex Chronicles connects to all the conversations we're having these days about sexuality and empowerment, like all these discussions about body positivity and consent and challenging the way we think about relationships. Like, do all those things connect back to what Zane was doing?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think in a lot of ways, Zane was ahead of her time. She was already having these conversations that are just now becoming mainstream.
Yeah, it's true. She really goes there with the power dynamics between men and women.
Right.
But she also gets into how women view their own desires.
Yeah. And those expectations that we put on ourselves.
Right. Like what we've internalized about what's okay for women to want or how they're supposed to act.
Exactly, like all those messages we get about being ladylike.
Exactly. And Zane's characters just throw all that out the window.
You really do.
It's like they're saying, this is my body, this is my pleasure, and I don't have to apologize for it.
And that's still a pretty radical idea even today.
It is.
We're still struggling with this idea that women can be both sexual and powerful at the same time.
That they can own their desires without being shamed or judged.
Exactly. And I think Zane really tapped into that raw, unfiltered desire.
Yeah. Not just the physical act, but the emotional and psychological stuff, too.
It's about agency, autonomy, the freedom to define your own experience.
And that's something that goes beyond just, a specific time or culture.
It's a universal human experience.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Sex Chronicles, what's the one big takeaway you want to leave our listener with today?
Well, I think Zane's work is a reminder that female pleasure is powerful. And it's something to be celebrated, not shamed or hidden away.
Yes.
And when women are empowered to own their desires, it can lead to some really amazing personal and societal transformations.
It's about reclaiming those narratives, breaking free from those expectations that hold us back, and really just forging a new path toward a more inclusive and liberated understanding of sexuality.
Exactly. And having those conversations even when they're difficult or uncomfortable, because that's how we grow and learn.
That's how we create a world where everyone feels seen and heard and empowered to be their true selves. So, to our listeners out there, we want to leave you with this. What resonated most with you about how Zane explores female desire? What challenged your own assumptions? And what makes you want to explore these ideas even further? Keep those questions in mind as you continue your own deep dive into the world of erotic literature. And remember, this journey of self-discovery, it's a lifelong process. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing your full self. Thanks for joining us.